Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webcast, ServiceNow Update Set Best Practices. My name is Amanda Greiner, Marketing Coordinator with GSI, and I'm also very pleased to welcome our main presenter, Joe Nicolosi, Senior ITSM Consultant. Now before we get started, I wanted to give you a chance to review our Safe Harbor Statement. And now for a quick overview of today's meeting, which will last about 60 minutes. First, we would like to take a moment to go over a couple of housekeeping items, as well as provide a brief company overview. Then, I'll turn it over to Joe to get into our main presentation, which will last about 40 minutes. Next, we'll take a minute to go over upcoming educational events, and then we'll wrap it up with a 10-minute Q&A session. If you would like to submit a question, you can do so through the questions panel at the bottom of the GoToWebinar console window located on the right side of your screen. Please note that questions will be answered at the end of the presentation, so if you would like to minimize your GoToWebinar console during the presentation, just click the right-facing arrow key on the top left of the console. Clicking the left arrow key will return the console so that you can input your questions. And now I'd like to give you a brief overview of GSI. GSI is a full ServiceNow consulting organization. We were founded in 2004 and now have over 100 employees. We have offices nationwide and are recognized on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies in the U.S. GSI specializes in project consulting, managed services, and other services, with all of our services backed with a 100% guarantee. GSI also provides a broad spectrum of business, functional, and technical consulting services for Oracle JD Edwards, Oracle NetSuite, Oracle Cloud, Salesforce, and other enterprise applications. We also offer an extensive array of cloud hosting solutions for Oracle Cloud, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and JDE Cloud 9. And now I would like to turn things over to Joe for our main presentation.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's get this thing set up. All right, everybody got my presentation up? Looks good?
Yeah,
okay.
looks good.
All right, so we're going to be talking about some best practices around update sets. So actually, get into that, just to make sure everybody's on the same page here. Update sets are used in ServiceNow as a way to keep track of development changes that you might do in, let's say, a development environment, and then you use that update set in order to promote to your QA and your prod environment. So just to level set there what update sets are. And the first thing I want to talk about is naming conventions. So this is where a lot of people, I've seen a lot of customers make some mistakes. And we've kind of, through some, experience in the industry, we've kind of come up with, at least here at GSI, naming conventions that we like. Now, we're an agile shop here, so we do things in sprints and releases and stuff like that. So the first thing that I like to put in an update set name is some sort of identifier for the sprint, so that I can group the update sets by sprint. You may have a different method by which you manage the work that comes in for your ServiceNow developers. For your ServiceNow team, you might have requests for enhancements coming in different ways. We use Agile. Sometimes we use Jira. Sometimes we use the actual Agile management module in ServiceNow. But whatever way that you use to track that, you kind of want to have a way to group those update sets together by at least, the effort of the thing you're working on. Like, we're going to do the service portal this one, so we'll prefix it with service portal or SP, and then we can go on to the rest of the name. That's just so that we start with a prefix that says this is the effort we're working on. sprint name or at least an abbreviation or an identifier that tells you which sprint these stories belong to is a good idea for the first thing in the name. The next part of your update set name should be an ID number to whatever application you're tracking the work in. So if you're using Agile like we do, it's usually the story ID. So it's STRY, a bunch of zeros, 1, and that keeps track of the individual requirement. It might be that you're tracking this in a spreadsheet, right? And you've got little ID numbers from each requirement that you've gathered. Maybe you've got an enhancement or just request catalog task tickets that have come in that you need to work on. But you want to be able to tie that back to a ticket somewhere in some system. Hopefully you're doing it in ServiceNow, that you can say that this update set is for this story or this request. Right. The next thing you want is a little shorthand description. Some quick way to describe it might be Service Portal Update Branding or SP Update Branding, right? Just a quick little thing that'll tell you at a glance, okay, that's what this particular thing is, because you don't want just a bunch of numbers there. It's going to be difficult, right? You want to put in some sort of developer initials to let you know, okay, this is the developer I need to talk to about this update set. There is a created by field on the update set that you can reference this, so the developer's initials aren't 100% necessary, but it depends on your organization and how you're going to divide up your work. It could be that you have a Scrum Master who's actually creating the update sets and then assigning them out to the developer. It really depends. But the last part is going to be the important part, is you want to version your update sets. I'll get into to exactly why that's super important later. But the important thing here is to have a naming convention, and you're not just coming in there and creating your update sets and giving them some random name. By having a naming convention and sticking to it, you're making a whole bunch of order out of that chaos in order to, it really helps you with the next thing that I really want to talk about. No, well, that's not what I wanted. Whoa. Oh, hold on, guys. I messed up. I've got these dang things hidden. Hold on. All right. Still not right. Sorry, guys. Bear with me. Okay. All right, and that's merging and bundling. So for a long time, ServiceNow has had the ability to merge update sets. So in the past, we would do this, let's say when a sprint is over, we'll take all of that sprint stories that are complete, we'll merge them together before moving them to the next, let's say into the QA environment. The reason you'd want to do that is if you had one developer working on something and he touched an object or made a change to an object, and then somebody else later comes on and does that, when you merge it, it just takes the latest copy of that object. So it avoids having to apply many update sets in a specific order. Because once you've merged them, you've got the latest copy of everything, and you don't have to worry about applying in this order, in a particular order, which is really, really handy. You also would merge update sets when you've got two update sets for a particular developer, and he's like, well, I did a few things in this update set or a few things in that, and I want to put these together and make just one update set. So the merge takes the latest updates to objects, and it does that so that you avoid conflicts. Any update sets that were merged into the merge set, it creates a merge set. So you have these two, let's say two other update sets. Those are then marked to ignore so that they're basically done. And what you're going to do is you're going to promote that merge set. Now, one of the big drawbacks of merging is you can't undo it. Once the update sets are merged, you can't go back. So that could be a problem if for some reason you've merged the update set, but then at the last minute someone says, no, this story isn't complete yet. We need to pull it out of the update. Well, it's too late now. So ServiceNow came up with a new way, at least for Madrid, for doing this, and it's called batching. So batching is really neat. A neat new way to do things. It's just a simple parent-child architecture. So you're setting one particular update set as the parent, and then you've got a bunch of childs. So you can create an update set for the sprint, and then all of the update sets that are for that sprint are going to be related to that parent. And then when you want to move, you can move the entire batch. It's really good to maintain versioning here in that. The other great thing is if you had that situation where at the last minute your boss comes in and says, no, this story is not complete, we need to pull it. No problem. You just take it out of the batch, and now that update set is unaffected. It still exists in its entirety and can be worked on, maybe moved to a different sprint if it's not quite complete yet. That particular sprint batches of update set without that one. So it basically gives you the ability to undo. And then when you do move the batch to when you retrieve it from, let's say, the QA instance, you can then preview and commit the entire batch together. That also, the other benefit of merging was you don't have to worry about applying things in order. Committing the batch does the same sort of thing. You don't have to worry about, okay, well, we need to apply this update set first, and then this one, and then this one. It's going to merge the batch, which is quite handy in avoiding any conflict errors that you might get after a preview. Big fan of this new feature. All right, so the other thing about update sets is not all changes are tracked in update sets. You probably have run into this issue a lot of times. Let's say you're working on a catalog item and you've built out the catalog item, and part of the catalog item is to assign this task to this new group, right? The group doesn't exist yet in any of the other environments, but it's a new group that you're going to create just for this particular thing. So you can create that group, let's say, in dev, include it in your catalog item. Let's say you assign the task to that team. Now, in previous to this, or without the force to update set, you would have to export that group out to XML and move it to the other environments manually. Well, with force to update set, you can take that particular group and add that group record to the update set. That greatly improves that. So a couple things about it. On this, I have a link to the actual list of what changes are not tracked in, are tracked in update sets versus not, but you can Google that and find it. All right, so the force to update set is a custom UI action, right? When you set it up globally so that it applies to every table, and it's administrator only, of course. Understand that it's a single record add to the update set. So I can go to the group, right, that I created for my catalog item, and I can add that group to the update set, but it doesn't add the members, right? So it's only that single record. And because of that, you don't want to use this for portal pages because there's a lot of supporting records and whatnot that are needed for that. So I wouldn't use it on those. But it's very, very handy tool to add to your system so that your admins can force particular records to update set if they're not already tracked in an update set. So how do you create this custom UI action? Well, you're using the API for Glide Update Manager 2. Now we have our own code, but really just Google Glide Update Manager 2, and there's lots of different folks who have different takes on this script, but it's really just a UI action script that uses Glide Update Manager 2, and you can pretty much copy and paste them. All right. I highly recommend it, having forced update set. It's very convenient. So it's worth your time. All right, next slide. All right, so some good habits to follow when you're working with update sets. Once you've taken an update set and moved it from dev into QA or from QA into prod, you want to set that update set to ignore in the lower environment. All right, so we've completed our sprint. I've, let's say, merged or batched all of my sprint things, and I've gone to my QA instance and I've retrieved completed update sets. So I've got it in QA, I've previewed and committed it. Now I want to go back to dev and change that update set status from complete to ignore. That avoids any issues in the future with retrieving completed update sets, because now it's going to try to retrieve that one again. But if it's ignored, it's going to be ignored. And that way you keep a nice orderly flow of, I know what's been moved over, and now I can maintain my update sets in dev a little bit cleaner. So once you've committed it into the new instance, into QA, you go back, take that update set in dev and mark it to ignore. Also, let's say you take that update set and you move it to production. Once you've moved it to production, you want to go back into QA, mark that update set as ignore. Then, once it's committed in production, you want to mark it to ignore in production as well, right? So by the time you're actually promoted all the way to production, you've taken this completed update set and it's ignored in all three environments. The reason for that is so that when you clone down from production down into QA and dev, the update sets are already ignored and you don't have to worry about going back in and re-ignoring them. Don't think that ignoring an update set in production, once you've committed the update set in production, ignoring it doesn't do anything to your changes. It just says, all right, we've committed this. We don't want you to operate on this anymore. All right, so make the one in prod ignore so that you can clone down the ignored and not promoted. The next is turn on the update set picker. If you have not gotten into using this particular user preference, I highly recommend it. It's the application picker as well if you're doing multiple applications. The update set picker, I'll show you how to do it in the demo section. But turn that thing on, right? All right, and so build fixes and new update sets. This is another important one. So let's say that you've done your work in your sprint, you moved things to QA, the QA testers are going through and they find a problem. Happens all the time, right? Well, now you want to do a fix for that. So a lot of people are going to be tempted to just go into QA, go to that update set, change it from committed in progress, make it their current set, do the fix, right, and then mark it back to completed, right? That's a bad idea. Don't do it that way. The way to properly do that, if you've got an update set that's in QA, they've tested, they found an error, you need to do a fix. You go back into dev and you create a new update set with a new version number, right? So take that same name in convention and do a .2, right? Or underscore QA fixes, whatever you want to denote that it's the next version of that. Do your fix in dev, confirm it, move that update set to the QA environment and commit it there. Then tell your QA folks, okay, test it again. Right. So always do new update sets for building any fixes to any previous update sets that you've done. That's an important one to do. All right, so some things to avoid. Don't delete update sets. Kind of goes, I'm sure that probably everybody on this webinar understands that, but you don't want to delete update sets because now you've got a bunch of orphaned updates. Do not back out the default update set. Yeah, this one will mess with your system pretty bad. So your best bet is to avoid the default update set. And then another one that kind of goes along with what I was talking about earlier with creating new update sets for any fix you might have to do for a particular thing is don't uncomplete an update set. So once you mark an update set as complete, I mean, don't mark it as complete until you're ready, but once it's complete, consider that update set complete, right? And don't come back in there and change the status back to in progress and continue working on it, change it back to complete. Now, for a good percentage of the time, you can get away with that. There's no problem, but there are situations where you can run into some difficulties with uncompleting update sets, especially when people have either merged or promoted already, especially if they've already been promoted. You just want to create a new update set, track it like that, and then you can batch it in later. All right, careful with data lookup tables. So ServiceNow has lots of data lookup tables and you can create your own custom data lookup tables. We've done a lot of it. Understand that changes to the data lookup tables are tracked in update sets. So here's an example of a problem we ran into. I myself learned this lesson the hard way for you. We wanted to have auto assignment based on CI, right? So we loaded the assignment data lookup rules table with CI and assignment group, right? Great, we loaded about 6,000 records into there. All of those got tracked in an update set. Well, that's kind of nice, Joe, but the problem was that bloated when we merged and tried to promote the preview for that update set took forever. Because it had all that data. So if you're mass loading big amounts of data into a lookup table, you might want to create a special update set just for you doing that so that you can either move that separately or if you're going to have to redo the import manually in the other environments, so that you exclude that large number of records. So just be careful with data lookup tables. A lot of times people are loading a lot of data in there. Just remember all that stuff gets tracked in whatever update set you're in. All right, and you have to be careful with changing the update set field value. So a lot of folks will, let's say you're working on something in one update set and you make a mistake and you're like, well, I need to actually put those updates in another update set. And so you go in there and you look at the customer updates XML table and you just change the field for the update set to the other update set, and voila, that update set's in a new update set. Now that's one of those things that 75% of the time you're going to get away with it, no problem. But the other issue is you might run into a situation where you have multiple changes to the same object in one update set. And that can be dangerous, so ServiceNow says you shouldn't do that. All right, and don't manually merge update sets. Just use the merge tool. Pretty straightforward. All right, so I think that's it for the slides. Let's go into the, all right. So here is my developer instance. Amanda, you can see that just fine?
Yep, we can see it just fine.
Okay, good. All right. So here are update sets, right? We've got our update sources, right? This is going to be your developer lower environments. That's where you're getting update sets from. Some people will defer to doing things like exporting update sets to XMLs. For instance, you can come in here, take this update set has no updates in it. You can set this to complete, right? And you can, oh, this is in a batch, so it won't work that way. But it used to be that they would export them to XML and move them over manually, download them and move them over manually. Anyway, I realize I just uncompleted an update set. But I don't recommend that. I recommend using the update sources and the retrieve completed update sets from your lower environments. That way they come in and they automatically are previewed, and you can come in and look at them and do any committing there. So recommend you use retrieve completed update sets rather than exporting to XML and moving them that way. All right. All right, so next, I'll talk a little bit more about naming convention here. So you can see here the naming convention that I kind of adopt is a sprint identifier, an underscore, the story identifier, an underscore, little brief blurb about it, underscore, my initials, and then version. Either .1, this is going to be a .1.2 if I actually created it. Avoid a lot, I've seen this a lot where people put like the date here. I don't find that information very useful at all in the naming convention. So I would recommend against that. You always have this anyway. So I don't think the date in the naming convention helps at all. But I can tell you right now that having the sprint identifier or some sort of way to group the effort together does come in quite handy, especially when you want to merge update sets. So this merge update set tool is going to create an update set. We can say sprint 1 merged update set version 1.0, right? And then if you do this, you can just do that, and then you've got all the stories for your particular sprint, and you can pop the merge button. Now these are, when you go to merge update sets here, these are all in progress. Merge completed sets just does the same sort of thing, except it's looking at state equals complete versus state equals in progress. If I were to make a recommendation, I would say only merge completed sets. So if you're going to go merge, go ahead and mark the update sets that you're going to merge as complete, right? All right, so that's merging. Remember, it takes the latest copy of whatever it is that you're working with, whatever object got modified, and includes that in the merge set. Note that when you do merge, if you've got a situation where you've got objects that are modified in same object modified in two update sets, it's going to take the newer one, and it'll also leave the older one. So it's going to go back and ignore all of your merged update sets, but those update sets aren't going to necessarily be 100% empty. All right, well, that's merging, which you almost don't need to do anymore. You might want to merge if you're doing, if you ran into a situation, like I said before, where you've got the wrong update set chosen, you can merge two together to get it. But, all right. So the other thing to look at here is this parent and batch base. So for this one, the way I really wanted to do this, instead of merging these, which is the old way, and I've certainly done that a lot, is this batch parent. So you just create an update set, right? And it's going to be the parent, and then you go in and you're just updating the parent here to that one update set. Now, it's a complete parent-child hierarchy, so this batch parent could have its own parent. So if you were really organized, which I haven't seen very many people who are quite this mature, but if you, let's say you had a whole release that had several sprints in it, you could then have a release update set that was a parent for all of the sprint update sets that were parent for all of the stories for each of those sprints. So the hierarchy can go more than just one layer deep, obviously. And the great thing about this is once this is completed, right? Note that this will complete all of the update sets in the batch. So when sprint 1 is complete, you can come in here to your sprint 1 parent, mark it as complete. It's going to complete everything else, and then you can retrieve it via your regular update sources, retrieve completed update sets. That's going to retrieve the whole batch, and then you can preview and commit the entire batch. But it also enables you to, even once you get it moved over here, you can go ahead and say, wait a minute, Joe. Like the additional comments isn't the right color red, so we don't want to actually include this in our sprint 1 batch at the last minute. Save that, and now it's no longer in our batch, and it's now excluded from the batch, and we can move on with the sprint, and maybe this is now, we just change this to sprint 2. Right. And they can continue working on it. Right. Now, other thing I wanted to show you is the update set picker. This is super handy. So you just come here to developer. You want to show the app, trust me, you want to show this and the update set picker. Right? Those two, if you're a developer in ServiceNow, should pretty much always be on. This allows you to have, this is the application picker, right? And this is the update set. So if I'm working on branding, right, and I want to switch and work on the LDAP config, I can just switch my update sets there rather than going here, dropping this down and whatnot. You just got it right up here. So, highly recommend it. All right. And then for UI actions, for the force to update set, just a quick second. All right. Well, my dev instance is running really slow. Come on now. All right. This is going to be global. All right. Probably don't want to show insert. I like a form link. One thing you want to include in force to update set is action name should be this. Sorry, I'm cutting and pasting. The force update. Right, global force to update set. Active. Has role admin, and then hold on, I want to put a little hint in there. So this is the script that we use. Very first thing it does is saves the record. The next thing is it checks to see is the table synced already, and does that by looking for this update sync attributes, and it just does nothing basically if it finds out the table is. So if you click force to update set and you're on a business rule, it's not going to do anything. But else, here is the Glide Update Manager 2, and it's as simple as this command right here. This is nothing. Set up the new Glide, then save record current, right? And then this one's just a little thing to show, hey, this is the update set that it was put into. Right, not much more to it. And now you've got a related link for force to update set. So like I said, if you had gone through and created a group for a catalog item, like we'll call it IT Finance Cap, right? You can then force this to update set. So I'm going to pick, imagine that this actually makes any sense, but I'll pick this notes green one here. Right, and I can force this to the update set. Right, now it's included in that update set. I can look at it, and you can see that group is now a part of the update set. Really, really handy for things like exactly that situation where I'm developing a bunch of catalog items that are going to involve new groups. Let's imagine for a second that you're not getting your groups from AD and you're managing them locally here. You can take that group record and include it without having to go through the whole step process of coming in here going, okay, I need to go show matching here and export this to XML and then go to the next environment and import it. Hope everybody understands why you would need to export that to XML rather than just, if you had just gone into the other environment and created a new record by manually typing in like actually come in here and click new and call it this same group name, the sysid is going to be different, and thus all of your workflow that's going to reference that group is going to be different. So that's why you would want to do this, because that group sysid has to be the same if you're going to call that in a workflow assignment or even in a system property. All right, I've been burning through. All right, that's forced update set, and you can see that now, at least for administrators, the way I set it up, it was administrators only. If we wanted to, we could conceivably include an incident in an update set, but I highly advise against that. Forced update set is not to be used for transactional data. It's just for one-off things you want to include in an update set that aren't normally tracked in an update set. So that's what it's for, but it's really handy. Okay, I think I've covered everything I wanted to. Double check the notes. Yeah, you want to be careful about backing out update sets because there is a way to back out update sets. And you might want to do that maybe if, let's say, you working in your developer instance and you made a change or you uploaded an update set from some other person and you decided that's not what you wanted, you could probably back it out that way. That's of course an option. Also, on that note there, a good thing to always do is if you're a ServiceNow developer professional at all, you should be signing up for a developer instance at developer.servicenow.com. Do not use your dev instance to try out new things to see if something's going to work. Use a dev instance that you can get for free to try out something crazy, right? And if you wanted to keep it, you could save it in an update set on your dev instance, export it to XML, and upload it into your dev instance, your company's dev instance. All right. All right. I think that about covers it for what I wanted to cover. All right, so let's get to questions. Are there any questions?
Right. Here, I'll take it back over. Okay. All right, so now I'd like to cover a few follow-up items, and then we'll move into the question and answer section of our webcast. DSI provides free educational resources for the ServiceNow community, including our educational webcasts, our monthly newsletter, our online resource center where you can access our on-demand webcasts, white papers, etc., and our on-site and virtual workshops. And if you would like to sign up for our email reminders for our upcoming webcasts, our newsletters, or create an account to access our resource center, you can go out to our website, getgsi.com, go to Applications, and then you'll select ServiceNow and the appropriate link on the right. And while I see that we've already had a couple questions submitted online, I would like to remind everyone that if you would still like to submit a question, you can do so using the questions panel on the GoToWebinar console window on the right side of your screen. If you minimized your console earlier, please click the left arrow to redisplay the questions panel. Okay, so it looks like our first question comes from Tyler, who asks, is there a way to have a custom table tracked in update sets?
Yes, there is. So for any table that you want to be included in tracking of update sets, so let's say you developed a custom application and you have a particular table that is setting up some properties or setting up some lookup data or something for your application, and you want that tracked into an update set, there's a way to set the attribute on the table, and that attribute is update_sync. If you set the update_sync attribute for a table, it's now being tracked by an update set. I would advise you to be very careful with that. Don't go and set update sync on your incident table. And remember that the way it tracks things is similar to force to update set. You're just getting that one record. You're not getting any related records. So be careful with it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joe. Our next question comes from John, who asks, can I move updates from one update set to another?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about this. You can open up that update set, then open up that update, and then there's a field for the update set, and you can just change it right there. That runs a risk of getting into a situation where you've got an update set that contains two different updates to the same object, which can cause errors and conflicts. So there is a ServiceNow approved process for doing that. Now, if you're super careful with it and you know what you're doing, yeah, you can go ahead and update that field. But ServiceNow actually thinks that no, you need to create a new update set, switch the desired update set, modify the object that was originally changed. You can make any sort of change to it, moving a field around it, any sort of change that's going to cause it to get tracked in your update set. You save that, and then you back out the change that was just recorded, and then save it again. All right, so you change some little minor detail, save it, open it back up again, unsave it, and then that's going to ensure that the latest version of that object is included in the update set that you want. So that update that you made is going to still be in the other update, but the latest update is going to be in the update set that you want.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. Next question asks, you mentioned a need to go into DEV and mark update sets as ignored after they move to UAT or the next environment. What would be the best case scenario? Wait, sorry, I'm sorry. What would be the use case for that scenario?
So the reason you want to do that is mainly to avoid confusion when you're retrieving update sets. So if I'm in UAT now and I press the retrieve completed update sets, right, it's going to go and look through and it's going to say, oh, well, it may already have that completed update set in there, but you're going to start cluttering things up. And this is just to keep things nice and tidy, right? So once you've retrieved the update set from a lower environment into your next instance and committed it, so once you've committed it in UAT, you go back into dev and mark that completed update set to ignore. That way, next time you're in UAT and you press that retrieve completed update sets, you're not pulling it over, you're not doing anything else with it, especially if you've merged or done any other changes to it. It works. All of this kind of works together when you follow the rule of not uncompleting update sets and creating new update sets for fixes. I hope that answers your question. it's just a good practice to get into to keep things nice and clean.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. And we've had a couple people ask about the recording and the presentations. Yes, we will be uploading a recording and the PowerPoint slides to our website, and those should be available by this time tomorrow. So just check back in tomorrow and they should be up there. And that seems to be the end of the questions today. So thank you, Joe, and everyone for your questions. And as a follow-up from today's webcast, we ask that you complete a short 1-minute survey when you exit. You'll be receiving an email with a link to our resource center on our website where you can access the recording from today's webcast as well as a copy of the presentation. After today's webcast, we'll do the drawing for the $25 Amazon gift card, and anyone that attended the entire webcast will be eligible, and we will notify the winner. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can contact Joe or I, and we will get back to you. Our contact info is on the screen. And we thank you for attending our presentation today, and we hope you have a great day.
Thank you all.